Tanya, and Rich.
I saw Rich.
Yeah, he's on there. There he is.
I'm here.
Hi, Councilmember. All right, so it's 6 p.m. So we're gonna call to order the December 21st meeting of the Woodland City Council. So please note that the December 21st, 2021 Woodland City Council meeting will be conducted pursuant Government Code Section 54953E, which allows the city to hold meetings via teleconference during a proclaimed state of emergency, when state or local officials have imposed or recommended measures to promote social distance. With that said, that meeting will be held via teleconference, and council members and the public are invited to participate via teleconference. Those locations are not listed on the agenda and are not accessible to the public. The public is encouraged to listen to the city council meeting live on Woodland TV channel 20, and also by going to the City of Woodland's website, cityofwoodland.org/meetings. We encourage participation, and you may do so by making comments during general public comment or a specific agenda item. And there's 3 ways to do that. You join the Zoom City Council meeting remotely, or by sending an email in advance. Oh, I'm getting some background there. Can I ask that go on mute if you're not speaking, please? All right, there we go. Okay, all right. So in addition to joining by Zoom, you're able to leave a voice message. All voice messages received by 6 will be played during City Council meeting. And of course, if something comes up during the meeting, you can send an email. We have instructions for all of the ways that you may participate with our City Council meeting on the agenda. All right, so I think, Madam Clerk, I think next, would you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Present.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Present.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Present.
Councilmember Stellard.
Present.
Mayor Vega.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. And now I'm going to ask Ms. McKinney to lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance. Sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Okay, and now we are going to move on to public comment. So City Clerk, are there any, Madam Clerk, are there any members of the public who wish to, who have not submitted, or who have submitted a public comment for an item not otherwise on the agenda?
Yes, I do have one email.
Okay, go ahead.
Mark Ullman. Mayor Vega and council members, I am Mark Ullman, former chair of the Sustainability Advisory Committee. My year 2 report is on the consent calendar at tonight's meeting. The report, which was written in September and subsequently unanimously approved by the committee, describes the committee's operations and work plan during my 12 months as chair. After you have had the opportunity to receive and read the report, I would request the opportunity to appear before the council at a meeting in the near future to present its summary and conclusions and to make my recommendations for improving the value of the committee for the benefit of the council. I would then be available to answer any questions. Please advise through staff if and when this brief presentation might be arranged as a regular agenda item. Thank you, and please accept my wish for a safe and happy holiday, Mark Ullman.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Hyatt, would you follow up with Mr. Ullman on discussing that further?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you and I will be having a conversation over the course of the next couple of weeks to talk about how to provide better communication and opportunity for the council to engage with the commissions as well as the Sustainability Advisory Committee. So I will certainly get back to them, let them know we'll be in touch and prepared to hopefully set that up first quarter of next year.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Then any hands raised, Madam Clerk?
No.
Okay. All right, great. Now we'll move on to communications from council. So at this time, I'll invite Councilwoman Garcia Cadena to start.
There we go. Sorry about that. Couldn't unmute. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just wanted to take this time to acknowledge the generosity of our community. On Saturday, I was able to attend the police department's toy giveaway that they do. There was breakfast with Santa out at Velocity Island Water Park. It was just, there were, I believe, over 60 families that attended, and the amount of toys and for all ages. There were scooters and there were Barbie dream houses and there were, iPads. There was just the whole everything. So it was really wonderful. And then when I opened the paper and I see that Toys for Tots had their event and, just another room full of toys, all donated by our community. It's just wonderful. And so, I know that our community cares for everyone in it throughout the year, but it really shows at this time of the year. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Garcia Cadena. All right, Councilmember Landsberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Besides my regular assignments that I attended on Zoom, I have no further comments for tonight. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Stallard.
Thank you. I do want to mention that I attended the Woodland Technology Alliance meeting on broadband in the community. I've kind of watched this issue in recent years and actually will have had meetings for over 20 years on the subject. But it's somewhat different now because there's some significant money available for improving broadband. Cecilia Aguiar Curry got a bill through which produced quite a bit of money. And what we're working on as a state is what we call middle mile, getting transmission from trunk lines out to communities. And then the last mile, of course, is what you look to typically for your commercial providers like Wave and AT&T, if they're not already involved in all parts of it. So anyway, it was a good discussion. I have argued, I would say that's probably a fair word, that we really need a coordinated approach countywide, as there's a fair amount of sophistication on the broadband issue, a lot of ins and outs, and need for technical know-how. Also, some of this money is literally for us to be able to induce the commercial providers to enhance service and to pay them for doing so from grants we would get from the state. That requires knowing what you're doing if you're going to spend the money effectively. So I just wanted to mention I was working on that. I think the only other thing I'd say tonight is I certainly share exactly what Tanya was talking about. And I just want to say, we really depend on quarterbacks in this town. We have a lot of willing workers. The quarterbacks are pretty important. And when it came to that wonderful tree lighting ceremony and the wonderful parade, we had a couple terrific quarterbacks. Al Eby, in the first instance, who conceived the idea of the parade and made it happen in 3 weeks. And then also Mark Hutt, who helped organize much of the event as well. So I want to send our whole community's thanks to those two in particular and to everybody who stepped up and helped make that wonderful evening so enjoyable for so many of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stallard. Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to again thank the employees. We've had the opportunity to celebrate our appreciation throughout different departments. So some of us have had the opportunity to attend some of the luncheons that have been provided for staff. I just want to acknowledge that even if we're not there, I want you to know that we appreciate the work that you contribute to our community. And some of you are leaving your families for quite a few hours to serve the citizens of Woodland. So to our police department and our firefighters who also dedicate a lot of time away from their families, I want to just thank them and thank their families for the time that they put into serving our community. And on a side note, I'd also like to thank our city manager, Ken Hyatt, for collaborating with all the different departments and organizing the events throughout the city staff. So I know it's a collaboration of different departments working together. So I appreciate everything that he does. And just a side note, happy birthday, Ken. Today's his birthday. So he's away from his family to be here with us. So thank you again for the service to our community.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. And I'll start off by saying happy birthday, Ken. I would start singing happy birthday, but I don't know that I could sing on a tune. But thank you for spending your birthday evening here with us. We appreciate it, and we're thankful for your family that they share you with us and our city. Thank you for that. I just want to chime in and just share my appreciation for all the city departments and all the teams that throughout the year have worked tirelessly to support our communities. You know, you guys make things happen, get water to our families, keep our streets safe, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for a great year. And I also just want to chime in and add to what Councilmember Stallard mentioned about the wonderful parade that we had and the whole festivities that happened on the 10th. It was an amazing turnout. It was great to see families and little kids smiling, happy to see Santa, and happy to see all the festivities. I also, something that I reflected on, just how the community comes together. You know, like Councilmember Garcia Cadena mentioned, there is we know there's care and support throughout the year, but it really, you see it live during the holidays. And it just makes such a difference for families and individuals who are in need. And then there's one last thing that I wanted to share with council and with the community. I'm in council chambers, and outside of council chambers, there's a beautiful poem that I'm gonna read. It's called Campo Bendito, and it's a dedication to the mutual housing in Spring Lake. And I'm gonna read it, so please bear with me. I thought I caught my eye, and it's beautiful. Okay, so it's Campo Bendito. Tierra fértil, productiva de nuestro Valle Dorado, la gente activa, muy de mañana toma el arado, donde abunda la cebolla, el chile y el ajo y el colorado tomate. Y no se diga de la fruta, las semillas, el melón, la sandía que se llevan a tu mesa día con día. Disfrutamos de estas vinadas todos los días de nuestra vida, por las manos productivas de esta gente querida. Millones de sueños quisiéramos alcanzar, pero de tener un hogar donde mi cabeza poder reposar, no hay otro en el mundo con el cual pueda pagar. Gracias por esa gran oportunidad, por ser generosos con todos nosotros. Mutual Housing at Spring Lake, resident member, Salud Menezes. I just thought that was a beautiful poem. The Spring Lake Mutual Housing is a site that I get to see often, as it's right in the neighborhood. And I just thought that was very appropriate in recognition of all of the farm workers within their community and how they work hard tirelessly to bring food to our tables in our communities. So with that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Manager for your council communications and any comments on the long range calendar.
Good. Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. First, thanks for the birthday wishes. Sincerely, there's no other place aside from my family that I'd rather be spending my birthday right now. So it's a privilege to be here. I do have a few quick updates for the council and community tonight. First, I'll start with COVID, and right, I think everybody's tracking the new variant that's spreading throughout the country and the state and the world. Yellow County's metrics continue to trend up, however, not sharply yet. So again, we'll attribute a lot of that to Yolo County's efforts and our community's efforts to be diligent in masking and vaccinating rates throughout the county and as well as the city. The health officials continue to indicate that the booster does have significant impact on the spread of the variant. So encourage folks to continue to, seek out the booster if you haven't already. And we'll be working with the health officer as we continue to track the spread of this new variant throughout the holiday season. It'll be very important, of course, as we find more time to gather over the holidays to be extra diligent. Also, at the last council meeting, I reported on the waste management's service delivery issues, particularly with respect to street pile pickup. It's my pleasure to report this evening that Waste Management has gotten ahead of their service issues and are now, at least over the last week and a half, on schedule, and do not anticipate at this point, barring any other unforeseen issues, to have any further service delays, but to help provide communication channels to constituents that might have missed service during that day. Waste Management has now instituted outbound calling for any routes on street pickup and street sweeping that got missed that day, letting the customers know when they will expect that service to be restored. Also want to report that this Friday afternoon, City Hall will be closed and then stay closed and remain closed through the balance of next week during the 2 holidays. We will reopen on January 3rd. So encourage folks that have business to do at City Hall here to get that done before the noon hour this Friday. And then we'll reopen on the 3rd. Real quick check at the long range. We do have a council meeting, assuming the council adopts the calendar this evening. The last item on the agenda set for January 4th. Currently, that agenda is pretty light and somewhat intentional. We'll be getting that council packet out this week, so you'll have plenty of time to read it over the holidays, but look forward to information on the East Beamer Way campus project. We've actually invited our project partners to present to the council an update on where we're at with that project. It's been quite some time since the council has received an update on how that project's progressing. And then I've also asked Doug Zeck from Fourth and Hope to come and present to the council what the first year of operating the new shelter has meant for the community, the lessons learned from their operations out there, and what we can expect on a go-forward basis. So we'll look forward to a healthy discussion and presentation of information on the shelter. And then I've also asked Public Works Director Craig Locke to present to the council some highlights for the Public Works Department over the last quarter. We've asked Police Chief, Fire Chief, and Christine Engel from Community Services to do something similar. So I figured he was due his time in the limelight to share what Public Works staff has been working on, and welcome any council questions and comments on that. So that's how we'll start off the first part of the year. I also look forward to working with the mayor and outlining the calendar for next year and some of the highlights of some of the key initiatives and projects that the council can expect to see on their agendas throughout the year. So I'll plan to present some of those highlights at that first meeting in January, so the council as a whole can see what to expect throughout the balance of the year 2022. That concludes my remarks. I'll give it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Hyatt. Okay, so that brings us to item F, the consent calendar, so which includes items 2 through 15. If any of my colleagues have any items that they would like to remove for further discussion or questions before getting a motion? No? No questions? Okay. Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Yeah, sorry, Madam Mayor. I actually, if I could just get some clarification or just ask, number 15, the extending healthy YOLO together, is there any word on whether or not there'll be changing their hours a little bit. They happen to be operating exactly when most people are at work. And I know a lot of people have asked if they would be extending it to maybe 7 or possibly being open on a Saturday. Mr. City Manager, do you know if that's going to happen at all?
We've had some preliminary conversations around what the best hours are to serve the public. And I have noted to them that if there is capacity for us to extend those hours into the evening, we'd like to do so. Unfortunately, what they tend to find is that there's a pulse in the morning and then, kind of midday and then in the evening, which is very challenging for them to figure out how to staff. But I agree. I think we do need to see if we can provide an opportunity for members of the community outside those normal work hours to get access to that testing. So I'll be working with them and I'll report out to the council on where we land on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia Cadena. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, do I see hand raised?
Actually, I just wanted to make a comment about one of the items, but just regarding the minutes of the Sustainability Committee. Again, just want to reiterate what was mentioned earlier, the amount of work that the volunteers on that committee spend and the thorough report that was submitted by them and their commitment to sustainability and our climate within our community. I just want to thank them for their efforts and know that we value their work, and that I think you mentioned earlier the opportunity for the public to have a report from that committee, so that that work isn't just in our reports, but that we can share with our community the amount of work and ideas that they've presented to the council, and the direction and vision that they have, and their leadership in that effort. So I just wanted to thank them again for that work.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. Okay, and Madam Clerk,
Sorry, one more.
Okay.
So I did have a question on number 11. Is there an update on this? I thought when we spoke on Monday, Ken, that there might be an update on this, the opioid settlement.
Yeah, I think when we spoke earlier this week, there was some potential understanding that the judge presiding over this lawsuit had rejected the settlement. That was a different case, it turns out. So in this case, our recommendation stands relative to seeking council's concurrence to move forward and participate in the settlement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Okay.
Mayor Vega, Stellard is happy to move the consent agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Stellard. And do I have
a second?
Okay. All right. So approval of the consent items 2 through 15. Motion by Councilmember Stellard and seconded by Councilmember Landsberg. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard?
Aye.
Mayor Vega?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional comments? No? Okay. All right, so now we're moving on to item G, public hearings. So item number 16, urgency ordinance adopting regulations to address SB 9, the housing development approvals. So I see Ms. Norris. So Mr. Hyatt, are you gonna open it up for us?
Yes, Cindy, our principal planner, will do the presentation, but as she brings up her PowerPoint presentation, I'll just, again, frame context here. The governor back in September of this past year signed into law Senate Bill 9, which obligates cities throughout the state and jurisdictions as well as counties to accept applications for urban lot splits and duplex developments. So this was a bill that was ultimately adopted with the intent and purpose to streamline permitting process and create new housing opportunities in California to help address the housing crisis. And before you this evening is an urgency ordinance, which is necessary as the law indicates that as of January 1st of 2022, which is coming up here shortly, we need to be in a position to start accepting those applications. And so the ordinance will provide a framework for us consistent with the Senate bill to begin to accept those applications and retain as much local control as possible relative to this somewhat sort of groundbreaking legislation that helps to try to address the housing crisis. And so I'll have Ms. Norris walk the council through the ordinance, the background on it, the proposed framework for how we anticipate addressing that here in Woodland and what it means for single-family neighborhoods here in Woodland, and welcome any council questions and comments before taking action. So Ms. Norris, you ready to walk the council through the presentation?
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mayor and members of the City Council. The purpose of this presentation is to provide a summary overview of the two new proposed ordinance amendments that are required in order to provide compliance with the recently approved Senate Bill 9, which was signed by the governor on September 16th. This bill represents a continuation of actions taken by the state over the last few years, actually, that are focused on housing legislation in an attempt to address the housing crisis in California. So SB 9 specifically addresses single-family zoning and allows property owners who meet certain eligibility requirements to increase density on their lots. The legislation addresses two conditions. The first condition is one in which an owner wishes to add another unit to an existing lot. The second condition allows some owners the ability to split their existing lots and thereby allowing up to 2 primary units on each lot. Those are called urban lot splits. And that distinguishes them from other types of lot splits that are allowed in our subdivision ordinance. As mentioned, SB 9 becomes effective on January 1st of 2022. And if the city does not have its own ordinance in place by that time, then owners will only be required to follow state requirements. An urgency ordinance is required in order for the city to provide for consideration of local conditions in order to ensure the public's health, safety, and welfare. So as mentioned, SB 9 applies to single-family residential zones. But what does that actually mean? This is interpreted to mean those zones where single-family units are the primary permitted use. Zones where duplex units are allowed on all lots are not included. Therefore, zones such as neighborhood preservation in the R2 district are not subject to the provisions of SB 9. So this lists the zones, single-family zones here in the city. This includes citywide R1, Spring Lake, the R3, R4, R5, and R8 districts. And in the southeast area, there are 2 districts, the R4 and R5. So this is a map that shows the location of all those zones that are potentially subject to the SB 9 provisions. One zone category that was not actually included in the ordinance, but upon further evaluation, staff realized that it actually does meet the criteria to be included, and that's the R8 zone in Spring Lake. So Spring Lake is actually all of these areas shown in purple, and then the red dots include the R8 designated parcels. Southeast area are the lots that are shown, or the parcels shown in green, and the yellow is the R1 citywide. It's actually in addition to these many of these requirements, the baseline requirements are similar to those actually included in the accessory dwelling unit requirements. And with an accessory dwelling unit, owners actually do not need to, if they're under 750 square feet, they don't pay impact fees. And so if we're not seeing ADUs in some of these locations, it's actually will be interesting to see whether there are other developments that occur that include primary units. So just to kind of go through the provisions in order to implement SB 9, both the subdivision ordinance and the zoning ordinance need to be amended, and new zoning code sections have been added for both of those. And they're included in your staff report. So I'll just go over the key highlights of these sections. This slide illustrates the key highlights from the subdivision ordinance sections. If compliant with this section, the parcel maps will involve staff level review only without a public hearing. All other lot splits in the city do require planning commission approval. So for a lot split, each new lot must be at least 1,200 square feet in size, and the two lots must be roughly equal in size, 60 to 40% ratio. Property owners must also sign a document stating that they will live in one of the units for a minimum of 3 years. And the legislation restricts the city from requiring offsite dedications or improvements. And a maximum of 2 units are allowed on each lot. And the definition of a unit can be one of 3 things. It can be a primary unit, it can be an ADU, or it can be a junior ADU. So, and there are also provisions for lots that are not eligible, those that are within a 100-year floodway, those that are historic or have historic properties, those that have existing income restrictions, and also a SB 9 allowed lot split may not be next to another lot that was established through an SB 9 lot split. So this slide just goes over the key provisions of the new zoning ordinance section. This applies to any time new units are added. This provides the criteria by which those units would be evaluated. So in those situations where the owner doesn't do a lot split, they can still add an additional unit. And this also includes the ability to add a junior ADU and a ADU as well, or accessory dwelling unit. So a total of 4 units can be allowed on a lot. As I mentioned, the baseline standards are similar to those that are currently allowed under the state for accessory dwelling units, in which the new unit requires a minimum 4-foot setback. The unit can be up to 800 square feet in size and cannot have a height at peak or the highest point of higher than 16 feet. If a dwelling unit meets those standards, it has to be allowed irregardless of whether it doesn't meet other zoning requirements such as lot coverage. So as part of the objective standards that have been added in the zoning, the city has added qualifiers to help kind of clarify different case situations. For example, if a lot is large enough and the new unit can fall within the underlying base zoning setback requirements, they can actually build a unit that's taller than 16 feet. And the zoning includes some provisions that identify exactly how tall that is. The same has to do with unit size. For example, if it falls within the base zone standards and can meet all of the requirements, then the unit can actually be larger than 800 square feet. Now, the state has specified 1 parking space is required for each of the units, and has provided exceptions to situations where even 1 parking space would not be required. And for example, if the site's within a half a mile of a major transit stop or a car share facility. The state has also provided that units may not be allowed to be rented on a short-term basis. So the zoning ordinance also provides some additional clarifying standards that address things such as driveways, how we handle driveways, architectural requirements, screening requirements, for example, placement of windows and balconies, minimum landscaping requirements, as well as buffering requirements. So one question I think that comes up is, well, what does this mean? How many units could this actually result in? So this table provides a brief overview. This is the same table that was in your staff report. And it compares the number of units that could be allowed now under the SB 9 provisions to the number of units that could be allowed, for example, in the R2 duplex or the NP district. So the legislation makes it clear that in the case of an urban lot split, that the agency is not required, city's not required to allow additional accessory dwelling units or junior accessory units, but they are allowed to have 2 units on a lot. So if you have a lot split, that really ultimately ends up in 4 units that are created in total. So in the case where there is no urban lot split, the legislation is silent with regard to ADUs and junior ADUs. So the result is if you have 2 primary units, you theoretically can potentially also have 1 ADU and 1 junior ADU, which also allows for up to a total of 4 dwelling units. So it's actually unclear how many units, new units, the city may see realized as a result of the new legislation. But any units that are created as a result of this can be counted towards the housing element allocation, the annual reporting. And as just a note, as we look to the future, and city staff is actually actively working on an update to the comprehensive zoning code. And we hope that will be moving forward next year, that the update will also include perhaps refinement of this, as well as additional provisions related to housing and provide potentially additional housing opportunities. And so I just included this graphic. I saw this and I thought it was actually somewhat amusing because it shows all the different potential scenarios that could be created with the SB 9. So with that, I concludes my staff report, and I will be happy to answer any questions. I do want to mention that staff recommends including reference to the Spring Lake R8 zone district. This reference was actually not included in the text of the ordinance. And so in the motion, it would be appropriate to reference that. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Norris. I appreciate your presentation. Okay, I'll open up to my colleagues to see if there are any questions of Ms. Norris. Let me see. All right, I see. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Sorry, I didn't put my hand, oh, sorry. I do have a question, Cindy. Again, I just want to clarify on the size of the units. You mentioned it can be an 800 square foot unit, correct?
The state, yes, the state basically says that if the unit is 800 square feet or less and meets the setbacks and the height restrictions, that the city cannot preclude that unit from going in if it doesn't meet other requirements.
Okay, so I just want to clarify the 750 square foot limit for the city, right?
Right.
Before it charges a development impact fee.
Correct.
To the owner. How does that conflict, or is that supersede one over the other if there's a 750 square foot limit, correct, as far as the city goes?
You know, I think in reality, what we may see are units that are probably 750 square feet or less because of this, which is consistent. In essence, the unit would be an accessory dwelling unit or primary unit, an additional primary unit. So It would apply in the case of a unit that is under 750 square feet.
So if it does, I just want to clarify so if it is 800, if it follows the guidelines of 800 square foot, the city would charge that owner an additional impact fee. So it doesn't preclude.
That's correct.
Our regulations. That's okay. Correct. And just for my own clarification, a split lot, as you described, the owner could then basically continues to be owner of that lot, or can they sell that lot to the, do you understand my question?
Yeah, I do. And, it doesn't speak to the lot ownership. The only thing the legislation speaks to is that the owner has to live in one of the units.
Okay. Okay. So I just wanted to, so it's not clear. They could technically, if they got met all the requirements, they could perhaps transfer that over to, or not.
Yes, there are restrictions though on like separate conveyance of, for example, the units that are on a lot. You could not sell, like if you had two primary units on one of the lots, you could not sell those units separately. Okay. But I do not believe there is any restriction on selling one lot. Yeah, Ethan.
Okay. And theoretically, the owner of the lot would maintain ownership of the ADU and the split lot and kind of oversee the building of, if they have an ADU and a junior ADU and they split the lot and build another primary residence, they could have an 800 square foot home, correct? Or larger? Or is it a limit on 800? I'm sorry for asking, but.
Yeah, no. I do see that Ethan maybe wants to clarify the previous answer. I don't know if that's.
Okay.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, that is, so Councilmember Fernandez, or Vice Mayor Fernandez, when they split the lot, the reason they would do that is because they want to sell one of the units. Okay. So they would split the lot, then they would have two separate lots and they would sell one of them. So if you take advantage of just the two units, the first provision that allows you to build two units on a single lot, in that case, the same person would have to own both of those units. But if you did the lot split, then the owner would live on one of the lots for 3 years, but then they would, in all likelihood, sell the other one.
They have the option then to sell after the 3 years.
Yeah. Well, no, they could sell the second lot right away.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's really the purpose. They wouldn't have to, but that would be the intent of doing the lot split, is that you can then separately convey.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Landsberg, I saw your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Cindy or Ethan, let's see if I get this straight. So I'm a landlord and I own a property on Freeman where there's huge lots on Freeman Street. And I want to take advantage of SB 9. Because I don't live there, I don't get to take advantage of SB 9.
That is correct. Well, you would not be able to split the lot.
The restriction on ownership only applies to the lot split. Yes. If you were to split the lot, you would have to sign an affidavit saying you were going to live in one of the units for at least 3 years, but you could still take advantage of the second aspect of it and build two separate units on that lot.
Okay.
It didn't live there.
Also noticed in looking at some of the legislation that I'm going to make up some numbers here. So 151st Street and 161st Street are neighbors. Both of them put an application in for SB 9 splitting. How do we choose which one? Only one can get it.
That's a good question. I suppose it might be the first one in, the first one that completes their application, because it does restrict one lot from being split next to another.
Is that something that we're going to build into our emergency ordinance then? I'm assuming.
And I suppose we could add, would the suggestion be to state that whoever turns or has a complete application first, if there are two competing applications?
Right.
Yeah.
And then I have another follow-up question. How are we going to get this information out to our owners here in Woodland who are able to take advantage of SB 9? How do we get the word out to them?
Well, we definitely will have the website. We did do our public noticing, but that did not include, individual property owner notification. We will definitely include information on the website. I think we'd have to kind of think a little bit more about how we might do that. Otherwise, perhaps a notice on the broader city website. There have been articles in the newspaper about it. We can confer on ways that we can maybe look at getting the word out on this.
I'd like for us to do that, Cindy, Ken. Put a little campaign out there. This is good, valuable information for individuals who are looking for a way to, provide housing for a loved one, or perhaps even make a few bucks. Take the opportunity. My last question is this. This whole bill, as I understand it, originally started as looking for ways to provide affordable housing. This has no provision for empty lots, as I understand it.
I'm sorry, when you say provision for empty lots? Is that
what if I own an empty lot, a nice big fat empty lot somewhere, and I want to build 2+2?
I believe that you would be able to, if you had an empty lot in the R1 district, and you wanted to build a primary and a secondary unit, I believe you'd be able to do that, as long as you were in the single family zoning district and met the requirements, or split that lot. But you'd have to sign that you would live on one of those homes.
For at least 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Walsh, were you gonna chime in on something?
Excuse me, I accidentally muted myself. I was just going to say that's correct. It does apply to empty lots.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, Councilmember Stollard, I see your hand raised.
Excuse me. Yes, Madam Mayor. This may already have been answered, but I just want to clarify it. If, in the second district in particular, we have a lot of very deep, larger lots. That doesn't mean they're so wide. And in some cases, in many cases, in fact, the house may extend to both the property lines on both sides, the minimum setbacks, 5 feet or so. So what I'm wondering is, can you still subdivide that lot, even if the second lot is behind the first lot? Or does there have to be some kind of minimum level of access or an easement across the first lot? Does all that get worked out by the planning staff, or is there some kind of by right ability to do it anyway?
I'm glad you asked that. We debated what to include, assuming that there would be one lot created behind another lot. So there are provisions added in there about there would have to be an easement, and you could allow a driveway, but it has to be 5 feet away from another driveway. And the zoning encourages, for example, shared driveway if at all possible. So, there are aspects, and I'm sure we'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'll have a comment when we get to that point, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Norris?
Madam Mayor, I do have one question maybe for Ethan, and that is, does the ordinance have a stipulation that if one were to split a lot, that there's a certain amount of time that they have to actually deliver additional units? Otherwise, that lot split becomes nullified. And if the intent is to actually get housing built, I'd hate to see, people come in, split lots only to prevent their neighbors from splitting their lots and actually not getting any additional housing built. Is there a provision in the law that requires somebody to actually follow through with developing a unit?
The ordinance actually has a time frame of 3 months to provide the requirements.
Well, just to clarify on that, we set that up so that they would take the 3 months to finalize their lot split, not to actually build the units.
That's
One thing, and Cindy, this could be something that I'm missing, but there are provisions that prevent you from doing multiple lot splits. But Cindy, the provision that you cannot do one next to another, did we address that in our ordinance? I'm not.
We did. Let me see. I'll look it up.
Okay, because that's something that I want to look at, because that's, but
and I think that's from the state.
Ethan, I thought I read it in there. The question I had is, how do you choose if they both put one in?
Right. That's a good question, except that I didn't think that was a requirement. So that's why I just wanted Cindy to point me to where that was.
Would you like me to read the section?
Or give me the citation.
Oh, I am looking at it in the ordinance. Would you like me to find it in the state requirements?
No, in the ordinance. What is the number?
It is in section 16.90.50 EB. And it says that the lot to be split is not adjacent to any lot that was established through a prior urban lot split by the owner of the lot split or by any person acting in concert with the owner.
So does that, that indicates to me that so long as the owner associated with the proposed lot split wasn't associated with an adjoining lot split, right? So trying to prevent speculation from people coming in and buying multiple properties and.
That's a really interesting question. I just haven't really thought about it this way before. And Councilmember Landsberg, I think you make a good point on that.
I just wondered why the legislature carved that out, because it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. The idea is to develop as many affordable units as possible. This seems to take out a significant number of them. When you look at some of the huge lots that are available in our some of our R1 areas, you know the ones I'm talking about that have huge lots. I know that in Sacramento, the Sacramento Bee said this is not going to work for us in Sacramento County for a variety of reasons, but that's one of them. Is that people are going to be upset because they can't split their lot, even though they have a significant amount of room to provide housing for those that need it. So I just wondered how we have let's just figure this out and make sure we nail it down.
That verbiage that I'd read is actually directly from the state language. And so it does say neither the owner nor any person acting in concert with the owner has previously subdivided an adjacent parcel. So it doesn't speak to whether a different owner is next to that parcel. It doesn't say that they can't do a lot split. It's only if it's the same owner.
Well, it definitely needs to be cleared up, Cindy, because I read some alternate documents, especially from Los Angeles County, which this really impacts significantly, that there can't be two adjoining parcels. So I would like to clear that up.
Right. I think you're right, Councilmember Landsberg. That is the way I read the language too. And it is in the statute. So I don't know that it's something that we can deviate from. We can look into that. The one thing, that as you know, I believe the planning staff is going through kind of a comprehensive zoning update right now. And as part of that, we are planning on taking a more careful look at these provisions and updating them as necessary through that process. And there will probably be some added clarity from the state. So at that point, we can see if there's a way that we can address that. In time, I do think Cindy is right that we would take the applications on a kind of a first come, first served basis. And if someone came in, we would process their application, and then that would affect their neighbors to either side and their ability to take advantage of this.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. So I'll add just for me, something that resonated with me with Councilmember Landsberg is just getting this information out in multiple languages, kind of ensuring that the community knows for the folks that are able to take advantage of that. Kind of when we get to that point, making sure again multiple languages so that folks are aware of this.
And we can certainly do that. We did do a similar process with when the legislation changed for the accessory dwelling units, and have had, a very good response in that regard.
That's great. I've also seen some other cities have some community workshops where it's question and answer sessions and offered in multiple language for people that have more questions or need to understand a little bit about what they're able to do. So I want to offer that up as a suggestion just so we get the word out. Okay, so any other questions? No, not seeing any.
Can I ask a facetious question?
Sure.
Yeah, but you have a nice big lot, and you have an applicant for lot splitting, and there's one historic oak on it, and it needs to go. Who wins? Don't have to answer that. Just ponder it. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Landsberg. Okay, so I think now it's time to open up the public hearing. Okay, so Madam Clerk, are there any emails, voicemails, or anybody raising their hand?
There is one attendee raising his hand, Kevin.
Okay, let's go ahead and listen to Kevin.
Kevin, can you hear me? Kevin?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead, Kevin, you have 3 minutes.
The only things I think of when I hear this densification is concerns over infrastructure and the ability of basically the pipes and the electrical facilities to support an increasing population. Not that they can't be dealt with. And then the parking, trying to define what constitutes a transit hub with regard to parking availability. And then with regard to what you're talking about with competing applicants in close proximity, I think when you come to trying to determine what's fair and who's acting first, then it becomes who has a more direct line of information and who could act upon the information faster. I would think that something like an auction would actually be more fair You could make the argument that auctions are unfair because whoever has the most money wins, but they will have paid for that advantage. That would be my one suggestion to throw out there. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
And that's all we have, Mayor Vega.
That's all we have. Okay. All right. So I think time to close public hearing and bring item back to council for further discussion or motion.
I'll make the motion if nobody else will.
Okay. Councilmember Landsberg made a motion.
Fernandez will second.
I did have a comment I wanted to make before we get to the vote, Madam Clerk. Mayor.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we have a motion and by Councilmember Landsberg and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. So, and we have a comment by Councilmember Stollard. Go ahead.
You know, I want everybody to realize this was a battle royal in the legislature, and a lot of amendments were put forward in order to get this bill through the legislature. Some of the things like that adjacent lot issue we were just discussing, I suspect were a response to criticisms and attempt to neutralize some of those criticisms. But this entire legislation is creating a great deal of heartburn statewide. The League of California Cities opposed it throughout. A group of cities in Southern California primarily are leading an initiative to allow cities to ignore it. So there's going to be a lot of conflict. And I think, you know, it's hard to appreciate at this point some of the actual things that are going to happen almost by right in consequence of this legislation. I'm going to support the action tonight because we have to act in order to be able to have anything in place to allow our city to make reasonable accommodations or requirements of things which are now going to be by right. I love the idea of filling in some of the available land in our city, but I think, you know, our city planning has always done this with thoughtfulness and care to the interests of all the people around it. Those things may not be a factor going forward. If you have a right to do something, you can do it regardless of how your neighbors may feel about it. So I think it's going to be tough. I would prefer to go slow in the implementation of SB 9. I mean, in other words, I would not like to create a land rush among people in our community, because I think we're going to learn a lot as we start to see this implemented anywhere. And I fully expect there's going to be clarifying amendments eventually coming from the legislature. I think this is an ordinance that we know we're going to be amending in time as we get more experience, and the legislature perhaps refines the approach presented in this legislation. So again, I'm supporting the action tonight, but I think we need to be rather sober about this. It has the possibility of creating some pretty significant disruption in parts of our community. And it's going to happen, and hopefully we can help it happen with, let's just say, everybody getting along. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stollard. Okay, any other comments before moving forward with the vote? Okay, all right. Madam Clerk, will you please call the vote?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stollard.
Councilmember Stollard, I think you're on mute.
I was. Aye.
Mayor Vega.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Walsh, you have your hand raised?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I did want to make one point of clarification on the question raised by Councilmember Landsberg. I was confused by it, and so I've continued to read the section. So I just wanted to clarify how that section is supposed to read. And what it says is, it says that the lot to be split, so this is someone coming in for an application, is not adjacent to any lot that was established through a prior urban lot split by the owner of the lot to be split or by a person acting in concert with the owner. So what that prevents is it prevents someone who owns two adjacent lots from splitting both lots. So, and it's really intended to make this happen on a more of a kind of a local level, and not have developers coming in and using this right off the bat. But it would have to be the same person or someone acting in concert. So if you owned a property that was in a single family residential area and you applied for a lot split, and then your neighbor did the same thing, you would both be able to apply. It would just be if you owned both lots, you couldn't split both lots. So that's the distinction there. So people working just living in the neighborhood won't be able, they'll all be able to take advantage of it. And we won't have to pick and choose on that. I just wanted to make that clarification.
Thanks for the deeper dig, Ethan.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
Yeah.
Councilmember Seller.
Opponents of this legislation are presuming that there's going to be a land rush to buy lots eligible for this kind of splitting, and that it could be happening dramatically. And I hope that isn't the case, because I think the legislation is clearly making the attempt for that not to happen. But that's one of the fears, is that developers will come in and buy lots with lots of land and parcel them up and create more housing, which may or may not be in conformance or comfortable for the rest of the neighboring area.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Sollard, and Mr. Walsh, thank you for the clarification on that. Ms. Norris, thank you so much again for that presentation. And okay, so now we're moving on to item H. So reports of the city manager, number 19, item number 17, Measure F annual report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. So Mr. Hyatt.
Yeah, thank you. So these next two items actually are very similar. These are annual reports that the city provides on its revenue and expenditures for sales tax measures. We called out measures F and measure J, the two half-cent and quarter-cent sales tax measures respectively. Also, and previously approved on your consent calendar was the annual report for measure E, which is the predecessor to measure F. The measure E spending plan and fund continues to have a balance, which we're getting close to spending down. So hopefully we're close to the last annual report on measure E. Measure F, measure J will be the focus as we move forward. So these, again, these reports are simply to provide an accounting, which is a stipulation under these measures to the community relative to how much did we collect, how did we spend it. And again, these are reports that reflect last fiscal year's final accounting, so it does not affect our current fiscal year. So with that, I'll hand it over to either Kim or Evis to walk the council through the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I'll be presenting the Measure J and Measure F reports tonight. Give me a moment while I pull up a presentation that I'll speak to.
Thank you, Evis.
Okay, so I'm hoping you guys can all see this. We'll go ahead and start with Measure F. And in terms of Measure F, as Ken stated, back in 2019, the City Council approved a spending plan for that fiscal year and all the way through the end of the life of Measure F, which goes through the fiscal year 3031. Approved uses of Measure F as decided by Council were for parks, roads, public safety, economic development, and a little bit of overhead. And so the total spending plan for Measure F as approved by City Council, which is approved every spring of every fiscal year, is approximately $73.3 million. Prior year expenditures, as seen in the presentation, accounts for about $4.8 million. This includes the year inception of 2019 through 2020, fiscal year 2020. We also see that fiscal year 2021 incurred expenses of $3.4 million and life-to-date expenditures of $8.2 million. Measure F did bring in revenue of about $6.8 million in fiscal year 2021. And we can go over each one of these by category if you guys would like, but the large portion of, the biggest portion of the allocation is for roads and public safety, a smaller portion for economic development, and a smaller portion for parks projects. The next slide is a summarized version of what you have received in your council packet, which is attachment A. This is pretty much the updated spending plan for Measure F, which includes all the forecast, which includes all the actual revenues received through fiscal year 2021, anticipated revenue for fiscal year 2022, and revenues through fiscal year 2026. I left off some years in this version of the plan just so it would all fit on the screen, but attachment A in your council communication does include those years. What this updated spending plan does show is what we intend to spend for every category of Measure F, and the fund balance and the reserves for each council priority, such as your parks projects reserve, your parking lot reserve, and the small pool project reserve. It is anticipated that over the life of Measure F, we will have about $12.9 million of reserve that has not been allocated to any projects. However, as we adopt our annual budget and we go through the planning process, each spring we will bring to council a proposed spending plan, which will allocate proposed revenue and anticipated revenue for every fiscal year, so that we will see that $2.9 million get allocated each fiscal year, and as revenues are realized. That is the presentation for Measure F. Do you guys have any questions at this moment?
I do, Madam Mayor.
Good. Proceed, Councilmember Stallard.
When it says TDA gas tax assistance, now is that the SB1 money?
So what this is basically in-house support for our gas tax money that is not quite enough to pay for our operations. So we do receive gas tax money, but in addition to that, we do allocate a portion of Measure F money to supplement that funding.
So it's not SB1 money, because that's a gas tax finance.
Yes, it is a gas tax. It is a highway use tax appropriation by the state.
But this isn't 100% of it, is it?
No. This is just a supplement. This supplements that fund.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. I just want to clarify again, the 2.9 million revenue balance. Did I hear you correctly saying that's a surplus revenue balance?
You mean the 12.9 at the end of the spending plan? Yeah, that's unreserved fund balance. But I can see council making some project commitments over the next a few years or whatever years are remaining in the spending plan.
Okay, so I just wanted to, and that's my second question is, are those sources then are available to use in other projects throughout the Measure F allotted activities, correct?
That is correct. And the City Council will get the opportunity to make those decisions every fiscal year as revenues are realized. Right now, those revenues are projected revenues. There could be a downturn in the economy, or revenues could continue to increase beyond what's projected. So we don't know what the future looks like, but this is what we're seeing today.
But currently those funds are not designated for a certain project.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. At least for me, thank you so much for the presentation. I just have a question if, other than our packet that was made available to the public, if somebody would like to get into more detail behind this summary, where can they find additional detail?
Well, they can certainly, number one, call me and we can go through the presentation and I can offer more details. We will be, as previously stated through our other budget presentations, our website does have a transparency portal, which offers many details in terms of how money is spent, not only in current dollars, but in previous years. That's one other option. Or you know, we do have this council agenda item, and certainly by email we can offer any information as requested.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. I do appreciate that. I sometimes have folks that ask for additional details, so I'd like to be able to point them in the direction where they can get that. Thank
Definitely.
you. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And Madam Clerk, are there any public comments for this item?
No, let me see. No.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, Stallard is happy to move adoption of the report.
Okay.
And I will second.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion by Councilmember Stallard and the second by Councilmember Garcia Cadena to accept the report. Am I stating that correctly? All right. So now to call for a vote. Madam Clerk?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard,
Aye.
Mayor Vega.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. So now item number 18, Measure J, annual report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. The staff presentation, is that you're going to lead us through that? Everybody's okay. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Go ahead and proceed. Similar to Measure F, Measure J is a quarter-cent sales tax that was approved by the community or citizenry in 2014. Measure J allows the city to commit certain dollars to youth programs, library services, crime prevention, and at-risk youth programming, and also utility assistance programming for folks, for low-income people that need assistance with their monthly utility bills. In fiscal year 2021, the city brought in just a little bit over 3.4 million, or 112% of the amended budget, of which for fiscal year 2021, 2.3 million was used to carry out these programs. As shown on in the presentation, the approved spending plan allows for about $19.8 million to be spent in youth programming, library programming, crime prevention, youth at risk, utility assistance. Of that funding, the advisories say that 60% should go towards youth programming, 20% towards library, 15% towards youth crime prevention, youth at risk, and 5% towards utility assistance. To date, we have spent about 54% of the plan towards youth programming, 21% towards library, 17% towards crime prevention, youth at risk, and 8% towards utility assistance. Year-to-date expenditures, which includes fiscal year 2014 through fiscal year 2020, and fiscal year 2021 as actual expenditures through the reporting year, is totals about $13.3 million. Below that first exhibit is Measure J, activities with much more detail. And I'm not sure if you guys want me to go through all of that, but it pretty much delineates all the endeavors and activities that our programming entails and incorporates. And that snapshot is only a visual for one fiscal year. The second slide I have is an updated Measure J spending plan, which outlines all of the activities that we previously spoke of, and includes actual revenues through fiscal year 2021, anticipated revenues for fiscal year 21-23, and fiscal year revenues for 22-23. For fiscal year 22-23, which is only a quarter of the revenues for the fiscal year, because that's when the Measure J expires, and Measure R, which was also approved by the citizenry, continues in its place. Similar to Measure F, Measure J anticipates that we will have a surplus, or an uncommitted reserve at the end of fiscal year 23 of about $2.2 million. However, the City Council will have an opportunity to weigh in as to how to best spend this money next spring with the approved spending plan in spring, and also with the adoption of the annual budget. With that, if anybody has any questions, I would love to answer any.
Thank you, Evis. Right. So let's see if any hand raised, any questions from council for Evis? Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Not a question this time. I just would like to make a comment to thank the citizens and residents of Woodland who have generously spent, and we are able to benefit from the tax increase that they voted for and have continued to support for our community. So it's just wonderful to see all that we're able to do because of that tax. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. Okay. Again, Evis, thank you so much for walking us through that summary. Just wanted to highlight Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez's thanks to all of the residents and as folks that come in and spend in our city to make these things possible. Something that jumps out is just the investment that we're making in our youth, right? So all those programs are possible throughout town because of this, and I greatly appreciate that. I mean, this is truly investing in the future. So thank you for that. Okay, with that, is there any, Madam Clerk, is there any public comment for this item?
No public comment.
Okay. All right, so with that, is there a motion to accept? All right, so Councilmember Garcia Cadena, see your hand raised?
Yes, I move that we accept the report as presented.
Okay.
Second by Fernandez.
All right. So you have a motion by Councilmember Garcia Cadena, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. So, Madam Clerk, would you call?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard.
Aye.
Mayor Vega.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Merry Christmas, Davis.
To you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have the item 19. So City Council meeting scheduled for 2022. So Mr. Hyatt, is that?
Yeah, I'll set the table here for this last item. So the matter of the council's calendar for 2022 is really the subject here, and the municipal code outlines that the council shall meet at the first and the third Tuesdays of every month. Normally that does not result in any conflicts, but what we do prior to launching into the next year. At the last council meeting of the prior year, we take a look at that calendar and we see if there's any potential conflicts to anticipate, and then adjust that and have the council adopt the final calendar for its meetings in the following year. So as outlined in the staff report and the calendar that's attached in that staff report, it lines up pretty cleanly next year, with one exception we highlighted in the staff report, and that is should there be a capital to capital event next late April, early May, that trip back to Washington, D.C. would result in overlap with the first council meeting in May. So the council needs to take up the consideration of potentially moving that meeting or canceling that meeting. Our recommendation at first is to possibly consider shifting that council meeting to a special meeting to land on Thursday. What would that be? May 5th? Apologize there. Thursday, May 5th, or even potentially slide it to the following week, which would have it land on May 10th. That would create a situation where the council, though, would have back-to-back meetings those following weeks on the 10th and the 17th. So with that exception, the balance of the calendar next year, I think, lines up pretty cleanly with what we're used to. There are some recesses identified in there. Welcome any council comments and feedback on whether those recess timeframes during the summer or the winter look good, or if you want to adjust those at all as well. But so I will hand it back to the council for discussion on the calendar, and particularly how you might want to handle that first May meeting as we move forward. So, Madam Mayor, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So any initial thoughts about the May meeting and the planned recesses as are included in the staff report? Go ahead, Councilmember Seller.
Well, I noticed Vicky politely raised her hand, but I'll proceed now that I have the mic on. I don't know that we need to take any action right now. I think we can actually wait until the spring or closer to any potential event to make a decision. That's going to be my thought. And that, it doesn't mean we can't solve it now, but you can solve it anytime.
Okay, Councilmember Sutter, thank you. All right, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Again, we don't know what will happen in spring of 2022 with COVID, but my suggestion and my reaction was that whoever is attending the cap to cap, if we do have a meeting on that Thursday, it's kind of requiring them to prepare for a meeting that having it following a trip like that. So my personal preference would be to either move it back to the 10th for if we need to, versus requiring whoever it is that's attending. I'm assuming Mayor Vega would be attending, having you rushing back for a meeting on that Thursday. So that's just my reaction to that date, if we have to take a poll.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. Councilmember Landsberg, I see. Are you?
Well, my only comment is I tend to agree with Councilmember Stallard that, I'm not sure if we're ready to do a straw poll who might be wanting to attend. I'm not sure if our new council members even know what it is, and if staff has had taken the time to go over what cap to cap is and what it means to the city. But if we knew today that 4 of us are going, then we ought to move the meeting. But if we don't know who's going as of today, or maybe even next week, I agree with Mr. Stallard that we should just postpone this decision for another day. Last I heard, I looked at the website, I think it's still on. But of course, that's subject to change, like Vicky said. So perhaps we're just a bit premature on making a move at this point until we know that we're not going to have a quorum of that Tuesday.
I'll chime in. I like to say that I like to have these meetings calendared out, and I'd be in favor of moving it to the 10th, understanding that things might change, but I like to have these meetings set for the year so we can have them out to the public and keep a cadence going. That's just me trying to get everything in line in my mind. So
if I would like to make the motion that we adopt the calendar with the exception of the first meeting in May, that it be held on May 10th to accommodate our mayor.
I will second that.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Garcia-Cadena, thank you. So a motion by Councilmember Stollard and seconded by Councilmember Garcia-Cadena. So that's adopting the calendar with that change in the May meeting. So any further discussion? Okay. Do we need to have public comment for this one? I think I missed that. Any public comment?
I don't see anybody raising their hand or no email.
Okay. All right. So Madam Clerk, will you call a vote, please?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia-Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard,
Aye.
Mayor Vega.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. So I think that wraps up our meeting. I want to ask if there's any memorial adjournments from my colleagues or from any member of the staff. No? Okay. I think that's it. Again, Ken, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Again, you can rush home to your family.
I know, I got enough time to still celebrate.
There you go. Good. And
That was your birthday gift.
Yes.
that was
Happy holidays to everyone.
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas to everyone. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Be safe.
Hi, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays. Thank you all.